I'm Tom Holland, and I'm just a little teenager. I don't know how to be friends with cool kids.
I'm Chris Pratt. Hello, hey, heyo.
All right, listeners, who do you think is better? Do you think my Tom Holland or Adeline's Chris Pratt is better?
My Chris Pratt's really bad.
Sound off in the comments.
Yours is like kind of good. Mine's really bad.
My name's Jackson McMurray.
My name's Adeline McMurray, professional Chris Pratt impersonator.
And okay, are you ready? This is No Nerds Allowed. Phase 2. And the music it's gonna be new music. It's very exciting for everybody listening.
So instead of feeling like you're at Disneyland, you're gonna feel like you're on the Transformers ride at Universal.
You're in Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, you get to kiss Keanu Reeves right on the lips.
So, this movie, you're gonna need to help me out here a little bit.
Yes.
Because I saw this movie approximately 10 days ago.
Whoops. Oopsie poopsie.
Because I had to see it right as it came out because I wrote a review of it for my school newspaper, which you can read. There'll be a link in the description. But, so ideally, and with a movie like this that we're seeing in theaters, it's tougher to take notes. So I think what we should do is we should just sort of go through the beats of the story. That way we can sort of, jog our own memories about how we felt about each of those times. Does that sound good to you?
And this is one of the first times we've, talked about a movie before it's come out on, DVD or digital or whatever. So there will be spoilers. There's always spoilers, but, this is, actually a movie that you might not want to get spoiled. It didn't come out in 2010 like the rest of our other movies. So if you should go see Onward, because it's really, really good. Spoiler alert, I really liked the movie.
Really
I
really
really
good.
liked it.
I would
I spoiled the podcast.
I would say really good. I don't know if I'd say really, really good.
I'd say really, really good. I don't know how to judge movies because when I say, because my friend, I just got out and I texted my friend group and I was like, oh guys, Onward's really good. And they were like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is it? And I was like probably an 8. I'd maybe even say 8.5. But, I just got done watching the movie, so, I really, really liked it. And saying that it was 8 out of 10 makes it sound like I didn't like it. But I did like it. But I don't want to say it's 10 out of 10, because I also feel like that's just not true, because there are a lot of movies in the world, so I don't know how to rate movies.
I have the opposite problem. On Letterboxd, I'm always, logging and, rating, movies that I watch. That's, part of it for me now.
Yeah.
But you do it on a 5-star rating system with half stars. So it's basically out of 10, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I give 4 out of 5s to, everything.
Yeah, because most movies are pretty good. And that's
and I always feel like a 3.5 out of 5 feels harsh. Even though it's a 7 out of 10, which is a perfectly fine score, And I constantly am trying to be I don't know, it's a weird thing that I've made myself do. I don't know. I always get so in my head about how I'm rating movies and whether I'm being consistent about it, and nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
It's not like I have any followers.
It's the joke about rating video games, is that if the game gets a 10 out of 10, that means it's a good game. If it gets an 8 out of 10, it's a bad video game. And if it gets anything less than 8 out of 10, it's unplayable garbage. That's just the way that it works.
Well, that's a specific gaming journalism criticism, though. I feel like that's a different beast altogether than
but it was relevant movies. And also funny, so I thought I would say it.
Okay, fair enough. So let's talk Simpsons. Let's talk about that Simpsons deal.
That fucking sucked, right? Did you like that?
Yeah, it's kind of no bueno.
It was
The bar is so high for Pixar short films that every time you walk into a Pixar flick, you're like, I can't wait to see what fun and exciting little adventure I'm going to get to go on.
Short that's going to be in front of the movie. And like it gets you ready to like watch a Pixar film because it just gets you into like that imaginative, like creative, like animated space before you watch the movie.
Right.
Never watch a film in the IMAX theater. And I'm saying this because when you sit down in an IMAX theater, they give you 4 different IMAX like commercials before they let you watch the movie. It's like, okay, all the ads are done. The lights have gone down. I'm ready to watch the movie. And then it gives me like 4 different like, amazing animated segments just to show me how good IMAX is before I can watch the goddamn film.
Astonishing clarity.
I'm like, oh my god.
Extra large 3D.
And it's so loud. It's like so loud. It's so much louder than the movie. It like hurts my ears. They're like bass boosting the fuck out of the theater more than this animated film ever will. It's just, why IMAX? Don't watch movies in IMAX. It's not worth it.
Right. Was it 3D or did you do 2D?
No, I just did 2D.
Okay. See, that's what's really fascinating to me is like how much 3D is going out of style lately.
Yeah, like so quickly too.
Fascinating. When I was working at the movie theater in 2017, I was always thinking about that because that was when it was like kind of starting to ease off, you know?
Yeah.
You'd get like all your big blockbuster action movies were in 3D, and then like, you know, the like mid-budget stuff was pretty much always not, which was not the case like 5 years ago when fucking every movie was in 3D. But like animated movies were like always in 3D. Like no matter what it was like that's something you could count on because it's just like an extra bit of revenue screen, like an extra bit of revenue to like push on tired parents who don't give a fuck. You know?
I mean, whenever you make a kids film, you're automatically gonna make $10 million. So it's just the way that it works. But so if you can also make like $3 every time you do one of those. So it's like, hell yeah.
Right. But now like something like this, which seems like it would be an obvious contender to be a 3D movie, like isn't even anymore. I think that's so weird how much like it was like this incredible innovation that we all like so got behind with Avatar, and like everything was 3D for so long, and now we just kind of don't give a shit anymore.
Well,
that's weird to me.
Well, I honestly think because it's definitely like revenue, but like made for like the theater itself and not necessarily for the movie, you know?
Right.
Like I feel like in order to make a 3D movie, you have to think about the fact that it's a 3D movie like throughout the whole process, or else it's just not going to be good. And so when it was super new and people were like thinking about it, they were like, oh, there's all these new like cool things that we can do because we have that 3D technology. But now that kind of like the fad of it has like worn off and people aren't as impressed by it anymore, they're like, well, if we're making this a 3D movie, we gotta like put a lot of effort into it and like do a lot of stuff that requires a lot of technology and a lot of people to do a lot of things, and for $3 more to go to the theater, so why would we do that?
But so anyway, regarding The Simpsons, it was not that funny, and there was one joke in it that I laughed at.
Which joke was that?
When Maggie like grabs the steering wheel out from Homer and starts like steering it to get to where she wants to go, you're like close up on her, and then you like pull out to when they're pulling into the park, and you just see that Homer's like got his arms behind his head, just being like, oh hell yeah, letting the baby drive. I thought that was funny. That got a laugh out of me.
It wasn't funny, and that's the problem with this short film. If you're like, okay, Disney's like has the Simpsons now, so they can start doing Simpsons stuff. And it's like they want to do a short. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So you'll do a cool animated short with the Simpsons. I like the Simpsons movie. That sounds like a fun idea. You can do some really cool animation stuff because you're working with Pixar, the fucking animation company. That sounds like a great idea. But instead, they just show you like a 2-minute excerpt from one of the new bad Simpsons episodes that everybody only watches when they lose the remote in the couch. And it's not even like original content. It's like this weird baby love story that like I've seen 10 billion times, and none of your jokes are funny, so I'm not willing to watch it again because I don't I don't care about Maggie, and I don't know why you thought that I did.
Right. And it's interesting. It's so weird because The Simpsons is not like a TV show for kids.
No.
But they're putting it... I mean, not that there was anything inappropriate about the short itself, but like the fact that you're like putting it in front of a Pixar movie is weirdly like targeting it at kids in a way that I don't know how I feel about.
Yeah.
And, okay. I have a quick little thing that I want to say about Disney and their corporate dominance. First of all, a lot of people think that Disney owns the Fox television network. They do not. That was a really explicit point in their dealings. They just own the Fox film studio
stuff,
and they broke into two different companies for Fox Film and Television, and Fox Television still exists on its own. The Simpsons was a specific thing that Disney owns The Simpsons now, but you know, people try to say like, oh, Disney owns Always Sunny in Philadelphia now, isn't that crazy? They don't. Different thing. Also, I feel like, I don't know, I'm kind of interested because the whole like, oh, Disney owns everything discourse has been like pitched at an 11 in the last like year or so.
Yeah.
It's just because Disney had the most insane year a company could possibly have last year, right?
Oh yeah.
Because they had Avengers Endgame, Toy Story 4, Lion King, Frozen 2, and the Star Wars Rise of Skywalker all at once, not to mention like Captain Marvel and Aladdin and Dumbo and like all these things.
And them
Plus,
opening up a new theme park.
Yeah, they opened up a new theme park. They bought Fox. They started a streaming service with the highest rated television show of the decade on it, a Star Wars TV show. Like, it's insane. Like, they had the most just buck wild successful year any corporate entity has ever had in history, right? But like, now they can't do that anymore.
Yeah, they did it.
They kind of shot their load last year, you know?
There's nowhere else to go.
This year, you know, obviously they've got movies coming out. They've got, like, Black Widow and Mulan and whatever. But, like, they don't have an Avengers Endgame. They don't have Star Wars. What they have is they have a Steven Spielberg West Side Story movie that they're hoping is going to make big bucks, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like, I'm wondering how that discourse is going to shift once we enter that, like, sort of cool down after the Disney eclipse of 2019.
Well, they're also getting Hamilton on Disney Plus, right? Next year.
Oh, I didn't see that.
They said they have a recorded version of it. It's coming out somewhere. I'm like 90% sure it's Disney Plus. Because the thing about people are all the studios are trying to get Broadway films for some reason.
Right.
I don't know
that's just
why.
The thing now. Everybody, it's just like a weird trend. Like,
but I was going to say leading off of the success of Cats, but Cats was not that.
Right.
It's Cats was not that success.
I don't know, like La La Land and Greatest Showman, I guess.
But we've already talked about that. It's not leading off of the success of that because it's a totally different thing. We were like, we like musicals. And they were like, oh, you want us to make movies out of Broadway musicals? And we went, no. And then they made Cats. And we went, this still isn't what we want. We told you we didn't want this. And then you made it. And then it was bad. So I don't know what you're doing.
Okay, I went to a screening of Cats on campus the other day. Yep. That was like a packed house. And it was so fun.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh my god. Okay, so the first time I saw it with like kind of a boring audience, I was like, that was funny, and there were some parts in it that were hilarious, but like overall it's like not really that crazy. But seeing it in like a rowdy theater with people who are like
in
just as excited about
students.
how yeah, exactly, was like the most fun I've had all year. And people are just like clapping and cheering and booing Idris Elba and like it's so good.
Remember when we watched Venom in a packed house and just had to sit there and let it happen? Yeah,
good times. I have a lot. Okay. We got to get on to the actual movie soon enough before we forget it. Just because we don't have any notes. But they have just started releasing some images from Venom 2 in which Woody Harrelson playing Carnage, playing Cletus Cassidy, looks like if Tintin were a meth dealer. And like, I'm so fascinated because like Venom, I think, is the craziest phenomenon in history. Because the movie sucks ass. But but we all just decided we liked it anyway.
There was enough homoerotic tension that everyone just decided it was good. And I don't, like, listen, I like homoerotic tension as much as the next person, but, like, not enough to justify this film being good, because it wasn't.
But, like, that movie is so insane, and Tom Hardy is giving this, like, incredible performance in this awful movie.
This bad film.
And, like, for some reason, we're all just like, but I'm kind of into it, though.
But
I am
like
kind of
it
into
still.
it, truthfully. And so now Venom 2, I'm curious to see if it's also going to suck ass and we're all going to still be into it. Or if they're going to step up their game and make it be good, you know? Because, like... Go ahead.
Do you remember in Venom when Tom Hardy's girlfriend is sexy lady Venom, and then she kisses him, and the symbiote goes from her to him, and what you could probably constitute as more. You could make that argument. Do you remember
And they
that
talk
part
about
of
how
the film?
sexually gratifying it is later.
Oh, God. I had to sit there in a theater and watch that happen while the five of us were losing our minds, and everyone else in the theater just pretended like that was okay and normal to be in a good film. I laughed, and someone looked at me as if they were annoyed at me, and I was like, "Sir, are you watching the same film as me? Because I don't think you are."
And now, so the Morbius trailer came out, and Michael Keaton is in it as the Vulture, which means that retroactively, I think Venom is part of the MCU timeline now, I think. There have been people saying that Michael Keaton isn't necessarily playing the Vulture. They didn't say that he was, but, like, that would be really whack if he wasn't, right?
That would be confusing if he wasn't.
But... like, I don't know.
Wasn't there a rumor that, like, Tom Holland is in Venom 2, like, somewhere doing something as Peter Parker?
That was a rumor for Venom 1 for a really long time. Apparently, he did show up on set at a certain point, but they got cold feet and didn't end up using whatever he did.
Yeah.
And you can tell there's, like, a fuck ton of stuff cut out of Venom.
Oh, God, that's the movie I want a director's cut of.
I know.
God.
But now there's even stronger fever pitch levels of rumors about Tom Holland being in Venom 2. I don't know. And Morbius, there's, like, pictures of Spider-Man around, so it's, like, definitely part of something.
Yeah.
But it's weirdly not the Spider-Man costume from the Marvel Spider-Man movies. And some people are saying that maybe it's going to be in the same canon as the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies,
God,
which is wild.
I don't want that.
There's this, like, Galaxy Brain fan theory that's going around that Morbius and Venom are going to take place in the Tobey Maguire universe. And they're in negotiations with Andrew Garfield to get him to come back and do another Spider-Man movie. So they're going to do a live-action Spider-Verse.
No, they wouldn't. They would. That would never happen.
It's so insane. I don't know. We'll see.
That's just
Only
what
time
some
will tell.
13-year-old girl on Tumblr wants to happen, and that's not gonna happen.
I remember when Avengers had just come out, and they just revealed their, like, lineup. And before I knew anything about, like, rights issues or whatever, I was so sure that Avengers 2 was gonna be, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Hulk, Wolverine, and Spider-Man, because those were all the superhero movies that were coming out in between them. I was like, that's the build-up, right? You've got Thor: The Dark World, Iron Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and what's his name? What's the name of the guy who directed The Wolverine?
I don't know. Why would I know that?
No, it's the guy who directed Logan and Walk the Line and Ford v Ferrari. James Mangold. James Mangold's The Wolverine. I was like, it's totally what it's gonna do, but obviously they didn't do
Why
it.
do I not remember the Wolverine? I remember Logan. Logan's fantastic. Why don't I remember Wolverine?
Didn't really like it. It's one of those things that, like, now, 8 years later, people are like, that movie kind of ruled and we kind of slept on it, and I still haven't seen it, but it was the same director as Logan, just doing, like, kind of a solo Wolverine movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the time, people were like, I kind of don't care about this. But now people are looking back at it and being like, this was better than we gave it credit for. I don't know.
Because Logan slaps, and that's just all I care about.
Logan rules. Logan does indeed slap. Adeline, Disney Pixar's Onward.
Do you know what else slaps? Disney Pixar's Onward. Did I say Pixar's? Anyway.
You did. So, okay, let's just do a little check-in. We are currently 25 minutes into this recording. And we're just now getting to the film.
We're bad at this.
Phase 2. Let's go.
Okay. This movie feels like it's all of the pieces of the universe somehow came together in the right order to make this film for me at the right point in my life. And I just don't know how that happens, just like statistically. Like, it's like, oh, here's the main protagonist. He's in high school still. Like, I'm out of high school. But it's like, he's kind of afraid to drive. And I'm like, oh, that's me. Also, D&D is involved. I'm like, oh, that's me. And it's like, oh, transition in life. I'm like, oh, fuck, that's me. So that's just... I'm just saying this movie definitely hit home.
Okay, my big thing, right at the beginning, cut out that whole expository intro. We don't need it.
Yeah, like, especially because we read the letter later.
Right. And it's just like, oh, okay, we know you're fucking stupid. So just here's why all the fantasy people just live in regular world, right? It's because it used to be like the regular fantasy that you know, but now it's later, and now they just have smartphones and khakis and whatever. And you're like, okay, just show me an elf in khakis. That's all I need.
It's all you have to do.
Right.
I mean, what I was really afraid of from the trailer, I don't know who's in charge of making Pixar's trailers for, like, their last 4 movies, but they've all been garbage and made their great movies look really bad.
Right.
Because what I was afraid of, because they showed that clip from the beginning of, like, oh, fantasy stuff, and then there's, like, a mermaid in a kiddie pool, and they showed that scene in all the trailers. So I was really afraid that this movie was gonna be, like, millennials are lazy idiots. Do you remember back in the olden days when things were cool and better? Let's go back to that. And that's what the film was gonna be. Right. So I'm very happy that's not what the film is, because that would be terrible.
Right. So I'm just, this movie takes a little bit to get going. I feel like I've seen that a lot from a lot of different people. Just that, like, the intro where they're like, oh, check it out, quirky teenager and rowdy older brother and mom doing her best, single mom trying her best. You're like,
I mean, like, Tom Holland is giving such a good performance as Ian, and, like, all of the stuff that they're doing is really good. But, like, there was a point when he was talking to, like, the other kids where I was like, oh, this is relatable content. And then it hit like a certain level, and then I was like, now this is just nerdy teen kid who can't make any friends, and look how quirky he is. Like, I don't know, I don't know where that line is, but they slowly went over it until I was like, this kid isn't he Tom. Listen, Tom Holland, let me be frank with you. You're Tom Holland. Just go talk to the youth.
One of the things I texted you after I got out of the movie was just that, like, it's easy to sort of write off Chris Pratt and Tom Holland as, like, the faces of, like, thoughtless bullshit blockbuster cinema, you know? Because they're just, like, in everything all the time. And they're very rarely doing, like, incredible work in great movies, you know, outside of their Marvel movies, which already have a lot of baggage associated with them, you know? Yeah. But it's, like, it's easy to forget that, like, they got to be that way because they're really fucking good actors.
Yeah, like, it's like they're in everything because even when they're just coasting, they're great. Like, this movie, one of my struggles with Chris Pratt is that it takes me a little bit to, like, get out of the fact that it's just Chris Pratt, if that makes any sense. Like, It takes me a minute to, like, accept his character just because his voice is so familiar to me. I'm just like, oh, that's Chris Pratt doing a Chris Pratt thing. But, like, the way that he did the performance, and I think it has something to do with the character also, like, I didn't get that at all. Like, he did such a good job, like, enveloping that character.
Mm-hmm. And like, one of the things I want to say is that Tom Holland has such an insane mastery of, like, dialect work. Because, because, you know, he's English, but, so he's already, like, doing an accent for all these American movies. But, like, it's so fascinating that, like, his accent as Spider-Man and his accent as Ian in this movie are not the same American accent. Like, he's clearly doing this, like, insanely subtle manipulation of, like, American dialects, because like him in this movie is like a little bit more like Pacific Northwest, I feel like,
Yeah.
versus Spider-Man, which is very, it's subtle, but it's still like Brooklyn kind of.
Yeah.
And it's just, I can't imagine being able to dial in that specifically for a dialect that's not naturally your own, I think it's so crazy.
Like a whole other accent and then different dialects within that other accent is just crazy.
Yeah. And also, I think this is just a good use of Chris Pratt. I feel like too often lately, Chris Pratt is playing a guy who's like suave and cool. And it's like, that's not how you do it. Like Jurassic World is like
Chris Pratt.
Yeah, Jurassic World is like big thumbs down for me. It's like, this is not what Chris Pratt does best. Like, he needs to be a goober, otherwise he just comes off as a douchebag,
Yeah.
And that's what makes Guardians of the Galaxy work, that's what makes Lego Movie work, and that's what makes this work. And, Jurassic World, when he's all suave and he's just like, I could have told you that. You're like, fuck off, Chris Pratt.
And you're like, fuck you, Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself, Mr. Dinosaur Man.
What's his name? Owen Grady in those movies?
Grayson. God, go make out with your velociraptors or whatever. I hate that guy.
Sucks. Bad news.
I love Chris Pratt. I fucking hate Owen, and I don't know why. I don't know why you brought this out of me. I hate that guy. I really, really like modern fantasy takes on, like, classic fantasy things, but I feel like people don't do what I like all of the time, and I like it when people do what I like. I like this kind of fantasy, where it's, like, it's just real life, but there's magic stuff going on, and there's hidden elements, and, like, everything is, like, nice. Like, it's not gritty and, like, realistic and, like, we have magic, but then it was taken away. Like, it's just nice and pretty and colorful, and there's magic. Like, I like this kind of modern fantasy. And it's also, they made a good decision with their fantasy, because fantasy can get so convoluted sometimes, thanks Tolkien, that sometimes when people make, like, a magic world, they have to go fucking all in on that magic world and, like, create a whole universe. But because this one is, like, pretty much adjacent to reality, plus, like, there's magic and, like, elves and stuff, like, there's not, like, all these weird rules that I have to keep up with. They're like, D&D, that's just how the magic works. And I'm like, cool, I already know that, thank you. I don't have to learn about a war 200 years ago, and I appreciate that.
So, yeah, I've been boning up. I've just been reading a whole bunch of, like, interviews and stuff the last few hours just to sort of make, keep it fresh in my head. What's fascinating to me is apparently that Dan Scanlon and I can't remember the name of the other woman who was, like, the other creative head on the movie. But they're not, like, D&D people. Like, they never really had any connection. It's the story that they built just based on, like, life experience. To hear Dan Scanlon tell it, he just says, like, I had, my dad died when I was a kid, and I wanted to make a movie about that. And I was like, what if someone could meet their dad for a day? And it's like, I mean, the only way you could do that's kind of magic, so the movie's got magic in it. I don't know, maybe they're elves or something, Like, it's just, like, him, like, spinning his wheels on, like, how he could tell this really personal story, Which turned into this, like, D&D infused thing, which is fascinating to me because, sort of my big take in my review that I wrote was that, like, D&D is huge again for some reason. Whether that's because, 18 to 24-year-olds grew up with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, so that's, like, influential to them, or because, like, video games are so, like, lifelike now that we're, like, desensitized to it and we want to retreat back into imagination, or whatever it is. Like, whatever the reason for it, like, not even necessarily millennials. I feel like there's, like, a butter zone kind of between Gen Z and millennials where D&D is the biggest.
Yeah.
But, like, it's huge again. And there are so many different people who are trying to weigh in on it because the Adventure Zone is getting their TV show, potentially. This movie. And there's a Dungeons and Dragons movie from John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein that I'm so fucking excited about.
Oh yeah. But, are they doing like because there is like a canon D&D like story that there's like a comic book of? Is that what they're doing, or is it just like
I don't know. It's not coming out until sometime next year. I think it's like holiday next year, so we don't know a whole lot about it yet.
That's what's so weird about people trying to like make other content out of D&D. because D&D is such a personalized story with whoever you're playing with,
right.
that, like, it's really hard to, like, make content for D&D, because literally every single person's campaign is different, and everyone's got a different character. So, like, that's why I think this movie is so smart about it, because, first of all, it's not really D&D, it's D&D adjacent, mostly because of copyright, but also because it's not... We're not talking about D&D, we're talking about our dead father who we're bringing back with magic.
Right, exactly.
But so it's, like... It's when you bring up D&D stuff, I'm excited and I can point at it without it being, like, actually D&D stuff, because if you were just like, here's a D&D story, here's some guy, I'm like, great, I don't know who that is.
So, but yeah, I mean, what I was saying was that, like, it's smart about the way it handles its, like, D&D connections, right?
Yeah.
Because it's got this really, like, episodic, like, quest-like structure, you know?
Yeah, which is really fun.
Which is cool, but you can't, like, format a movie exactly like a D&D campaign, right?
Yeah, you can't.
It would not work, it would suck.
It would be boring, you wouldn't be doing anything a lot of the time.
Right. But what's smart about it is that they take it and they adjust it. They make it a little bit different to make it, you know, fit into what you expect out of a movie. Just like they sort of take, you know, the big idea of, like, fantasy iconography and, like, adjust it to their own devices, make it something new and exciting. And that's what I think is important coming out of, like, all the new D&D stuff, is that they can't just be like, oh, D&D, you guys like that, right? There it is. You gotta, like, be conscientious about...
Because that's not how D&D works.
Right, you gotta be conscientious about how you are using it in the structure of whatever, like, new medium you're bringing it into. Because, like, a tabletop role-playing game is, like, an art medium that is weirdly... I don't know, it's so totally different from, like, anything else. And, like, adapting it into another format is a really weird, interesting challenge. Yeah. And I'm excited to see how they do it.
Because if you meet someone else who's into D&D, you have a lot of touchstones that you can, like, talk about, but, like, at the end of the day, like, you don't like the same thing, because the two things that you're doing are so different. Like, if you and somebody else go and see a movie or read a book, you've done the same thing, but with D&D, you've all done, like, totally different things, even if there are touchstones. So it's like, how do you rally a group of people around one thing when they're all doing totally different things?
Right. I'm looking at the,
But it was funny, because the way that they set up the plot of this movie, it's absolutely a quest. Like, they have to go get the gem to bring their dad back, and they have to go to the Manticore, and then they have to go find where the gem is and follow the map and all that stuff, and it's really fun. But it would, even, like, in, like, the dialogue and the story plots, like, in the back of my mind, just because they had even, like, brought up the, like, concept of this being kind of D&D adjacent, sometimes when they would, like, talk to somebody or do something, I'd be like, oh, that's a charisma check. Like, they're not drawing attention to the fact that this is a charisma check, but, like, that's what it is.
Yeah, like when they're bluffing their way when he's in disguise as the Centaur.
Yeah. Or, like, when they're talking to the Manticore, and they're like, we have to be super respectful, and he's like, let me do the talking, and he's like, she says no, and he, like, keeps talking to her. I'm like, oh, this is a charisma check. Like, they're not, like, they're not, like, pointing at it and being like, oh, roll a d20, it's a charisma check. It's just, like, it was just, that's what it was, and it was cool.
Right. That's a fun point. I didn't really think of it that way. I'm the kind of person that, like, for some reason, there's nothing... I love playing D&D with my friends. It's something that I do sometimes, and I love it very much. But I can't stand hearing about other people's D&D campaigns. I don't know why. It's like hearing somebody describe a dream they had, where I just have to be like...
It's very fair.
I just have to be like, yeah. And then...
It's literally the equivalent of someone going, so I had this idea for a film, and then that's when you know you need to shoot yourself in the head to avoid this conversation.
And you just have to be like, oh, your elf guy did that? That's crazy. And, like, and I feel like that's part of like modern D&D culture. Like, people love to tell the stories of their campaigns, and people love to hear about the stories of other people's campaigns. I'm not like that, though. I am so not into, like, being regaled by somebody's D&D campaign.
Maybe you're just selfish.
Could be. I mean, that's fair. That's a fair assessment. But,
I'm Jackson. I just want to talk about my squirrel rogue, whose name is Fuck Mountain or whatever.
His name's Joey of Fuck Mountain. He's from Fuck Mountain.
He's
anyway,
the king.
but I'm not going to tell you about my campaign with him because I don't feel like anybody would give a shit. They weren't there. Anyway, I'm looking at the Dungeons and Dragons Wikipedia page for the movie. It's one of these movies that they've been kicking around for a really long time. The only thing we know is that John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein are directing now. They've had like 4 other directors, but now we're settled on them.
Oh yeah.
And Ansel Elgort is gonna be in it? ?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of it. Originally, Rob Letterman was gonna direct it, the guy who did Detective Pikachu.
That would be fun.
But he is no longer. But John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein are like the guys I am pulling for the most out of anybody in the film industry right now.
Yeah.
Because they directed Game Night. Did you ever see Game Night?
I didn't. I heard you talk about how good it was like 12 times, though. So in my head, it's a good film.
Right. I love Game Night. Game Night's one of my favorite movies of the last few years. And they, they've been around and they've done, like, writing and producing jobs. Both of them were writers on Spider-Man Homecoming. But they were going to do a Flash movie for a really long time. They were attached to the Flash movie for so long, and I was so excited about that. And it was one of those movies that everybody said was never going to come out, and it kept getting pushed back and back and back. And they switched directors again, and now it's going to be Andy Muschietti, who directed the It movies. And I'm just so mad that I don't get to see the John Francis Daley, Jonathan Goldstein Flash movie, because I was so amped about it. But yeah, I don't know. I want them to do well, because I'm a big fan of theirs. Anyway, one of the things in this movie, I think it's fascinating that, like, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's last Pixar role was, like, the female lead, the, like, ingenue of the movie in Bug's Life. And then now she's, like, the homely mom. I'm like, there's something weird about that. Like, this is, like...
But I love how this movie treats the mom character. Because it's simultaneously, like, kind of how you expect them to do it. And then simultaneously, like, its own thing. And that's what I really like. Like, I think tropes can be really fun. But I also think it's really nice to get outside of them. So I think they have, like, a fun back and forth with, like, tropes. Basically in this whole movie. And that's what makes it really refreshing. But, like, because she does, like, workout videos, and she's, like, a single mom trying her best, and she's got a new boyfriend, and, like, stuff like that.
Right.
But then when her kids are in trouble, she just, like, gets in a car and, like, pretends to be a medic on a police site and picks up a sword and just rides a manticore somewhere. Like, there's just, like, all these different layers to her, and I think she's a really enjoyable character.
Right.
I wish we focused just a little bit more on the fact that their dad is her husband, because I feel like we don't touch on that as much as we maybe should. It's more about how much she cares about her sons and what they're going through, and that's great, but I would just love a little bit more emotional moments with the mom, especially because we have, like, the new boyfriend. I just want I want
dig
more
into
drama.
that a little bit more. And and I wouldn't even mind adding that in, because this movie is only like 95 minutes long.
Yeah, it's like exactly
right.
90 minutes.
Which is, I mean, it's nice. I kind of like that it's kind of bite-sized, like it gets in and gets out nice and quick, and you're like...
It feels like a one-shot in D&D. Like, we did what we came here to do.
But what do you think about the gag when the centaur guy makes horse noises?
I wanted to like the centaur guy, and I just didn't. Like, it's probably just because I like Griffin McElroy, but, like, I really like the, like, stepdad character that's, like, simultaneously, like, trying his best, and you feel for him, but he's also just, like, the worst and kind of annoying, so you're like, God, this guy. And that's what I want him to be, but, like, sometimes, like, talking about, like, using tropes, like, successfully, I feel like sometimes he was too much, just, like, this, like, annoying guy. Like, when he goes into the house and he just, like, knocks all the shit over in the whole room, like, that was, like, you've been a centaur. You've had that body
your whole life.
Yeah, you should know how to be in a fucking building. And it's just, Like,
one time somebody a girl asked me, like, is it hard to aim when you're, like, standing up and peeing? And I was like, I mean... Maybe, but, like, I've been doing it every day for the last 22 years. Like, I feel like I've put in my Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours on it, Like, I'm pretty good at it by now. I don't know, that's not relevant. Continue.
No, talk about how good you are at peeing somewhere. But Yeah, no, it's just like, why are you knocking over all this shit in this house? I also this is just me being a giant fucking nerd, but like when the mom like steps on the minifigure in the hallway and she like makes some joke about it, I'm like, oh, those are so expensive. If that broke, it would be like a whole thing. And that's just where my mind immediately went.
Okay. I have one thing I want to say. This is a bad CinemaSins criticism, but I was thinking it the whole movie, okay? They're getting another gem. Why not just start the spell over from the beginning? Right?
Because they already did it kind of once.
But they never said you couldn't do it more than once.
No, they said you could never bring him back again after you do it the one time.
When did they say that?
They say that a lot. They say that when they first read it, and they say it later, and they say it.
No, the reason they can't do it again because they don't have the power.
No, they said
have the power. They can just do it again.
No, the prerequisites for the spell is that you can only do it once, and that's why there is that so much of a time crunch, just because they can only do it once.
I don't think they said that.
Because then they could just do it whenever they got a power crystal. It's a special one-time thing.
Right.
It's a special one-time thing. That's the whole thing.
I think you had to add that yourself. I don't think that was in the movie.
No, it's in the Jackson. I watched it an hour ago. It's in the film.
I also watched it.
But anyway. 10 days ago.
Yeah, that's true.
So shut the fuck up.
There was a moment when he's like listening to the cassette tape from his dad, where I was kind of like, say again.
I love that cassette tape.
Right. Well, I mean, I was kind of like, this has been done before, Like, specifically with the cassette tape thing, it's become this weird trope ever since Guardians of the Galaxy, but also just, like, the voicemail from dead relative thing is just, like, so played out, and I was like, I don't know if I'm into this. But as I was looking through, apparently that's based on a reality for Dan Scanlon. He did have a cassette tape like that from his dead dad that he apparently played for an audience at the D23 conference when they announced this movie, which is like so hardcore. Like,
yeah, that is.
Like, imagine you're just like, oh yeah, I love Disney. I can't wait to find out what the new Avengers movie is gonna be. And then Dan Scanlon's just like, my dad died when I was very young. Here are his final words. And you're like, oh, what? Like, for real? Your real dad? Your
dad?
Like,
well, what I love so much about that tape recording is I love the performance of the guy who plays the dad.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like Guardians of the Galaxy or like all those other tropes where they're like, hello, son. I'm speaking to you from beyond the void, and I will guide you on your life, my beautiful glistening boy. It's not that. Right. It's their dad trying to fix the tape recorder, and her mom's like, I'm going over there because it's gonna explode. Like, it's so naturalistic and nice that it like, whatever the tropes were involved, I ignored them because just the performance is so good. And it seemed realistic. It didn't seem like a plot point. It seemed this is something that somebody would have.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think if we're going through, like, the plot of the movie. Because the first thing they do, I mean, they, like, try to bring the dad back, but then he's just legs. Which is fine. I kind of like it. I just feel like they don't get as much mileage out of it as a gag as they should, I feel like a lot of the time you kind of forget the dad is there, and you're just like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because that's sort of the point, is that he can't, like, interact or be a character in any meaningful way, and that's what they're trying to do. But at the same time, you want to, like, really feel for him as a character, so you want them to get him back, And I feel like it kind of half achieves that. Because, like, obviously there's, like, the scene where he's dancing that's so fun, and that, like, really works, and, like, the whole bit where he's, like, drumming on his shoes, and you can, there's some, like, pathos imbibed in the animation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, most of the movie, you, like, totally don't even have to think about the fact that he's there,
Yeah. He's really just there for, like, them to, like, bumble around and make sure he doesn't die.
Right.
Which is funny, but I really like the magic in this movie, like the way that he just, like, does magic.
Right.
I already kind of said this already, but, like, I don't like it when magic has, like, too many rules. Like, I think magic needs to have rules, or else you can just do whatever the hell you want, and that's not fun a lot of the time.
Right.
But I like how simplistic the rules are. Like, for this spell, you gotta concentrate, and you gotta think, and then you do it, and then he does it. I'm like, great. Right. And he's like, for this one, you gotta do those 3 things. And I'm like, oh, cool, great. Thank you for telling me that, because he doesn't know it either.
It kind of builds on itself, and you, like, understand the progression of what he has to do and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the movie, when we've seen him learn all these things, and then now he's, like, fighting a dragon and, like, running through the air, and when he sends that sword at, like, 90 miles per hour into the giant concrete dragon, that's dope as hell. It's so cool.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll get to it, but I love the ending of this movie.
It's got the fucking... They're like, oh, it's like a dragon made of stone. And, like, in my head, I was like, oh, I know what that looks like, whatever. But then they're like, we're gonna make a dragon out of the high school over there. And then I was like, oh, holy shit, I'm so down for this.
And it, like, roars, and the like, school bell is, like, the sound of its roaring.
Yeah.
It kicks ass. Like,
and it's got,
so
like,
cool.
the dragon mascot on its face. It's so good.
But, okay, so they're going on this adventure, right? He's learning the spells one at a time. For every event, he has to learn a new spell, right? It's very methodical in that way.
Yeah, which it's fine, though.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad thing. It's just like, oh, I wonder if this is going to come back in the climax. This is just a little moment, but the moment when they're getting attacked by the pixies, and Chris Pratt is, like, mansplaining to the pixies how their ancestors had wings, and they should just concentrate on being able to fly again. I was like... What the fuck is this? This is so whack. Why is he saying that? Like,
why would you talk to a person like this?
Yeah, like, and it's just meant to be, like, kind of a gag, and you're not meant to think on it that much, but you're just like, oh, this is the worst. Like, I hate this so much. Like, just, like, explaining someone else's culture to them.
Yeah. And I don't know, yeah, like, yeah. Yeah, no, I get you. I love the Manticore, and I love the whole scene in the Manticore Inn so much. Like, it's, like... I mean, first of all, because it's, like, it's the trope of the pub that you go to at the beginning of the adventure. That's always a thing. Right. But then having to be a Chuck E. Cheese is so funny, and having the Manticore be this, like, manager who just fucking hates it here is just so good. Yeah. Like, it's just so like, my preferred, like, version of storytelling, where it's, like, we are doing things, but it's also funny, and I want to have fun. Like, it's just, I love it so much.
And a lot has been made of, like, the writing in this movie, and how sort of... how reliant it is on, like, physical visual jokes as opposed to just, like, you know, written cheesy jokes, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think is, you know, super impressive in this movie, especially in that scene. Like, all of the humor in that basically comes from just, like, the way people move, and, like, things you're doing with the camera, and, like, things you catch in the background, and, like, the physical way that the characters are interacting with each other is funny. The animation is funny, you know?
Yeah. I love it when they get out of there after the place burns down, and they've got the menu, and they're like, Kayla already solved the puzzle for us. Like, that's just, I just love that.
Funny. By the way, this is not relevant at all. I found this picture online when I was looking at stuff where Ian looks like a fucking weird gremlin, and
Are you gonna send me porn right now?
No, I just want to show it to you.
He looks like Remy from Ratatouille.
He looks like... No, he looks like Animal from the Muppets, is what he looks like. I'm glad you think that's funny and this is not just dead air. For context, this is just a screenshot from the movie I saw somewhere where it's just like a weird moment in the animation, I guess, where Ian just looks like a weird Muppet gremlin.
He looks like the letter C, and, like, his eyes are, like, completely open so that you can't see his eyelids, and he's, like, dancing, so, like, his knees are bent and his arms are just, like, in front of him, and he looks like one of those worms on a string.
He does. Okay, I'll post this to the Twitter so everyone can see.
Don't give any context. Just There's a lot of really good things about this screenshot.
My face when the weed hits.
face when my mom hits me.
My face when I just got out of the film Disney Pixar's Onward. What's a good, none of those are funny. What's a good my face when for this face?
I don't think there's any good my face when jokes.
No, they're all good.
People really be making diarrhea jokes out here, and I don't know who thinks they're still funny.
When the diarrhea hits?
Yeah, when you're done with the Taco Bell. Jackson,
when the Taco
did you
Bell
just fucking
hits?
laugh at that?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm gonna post this to Twitter with the caption, when the Taco Bell hits. See? It's funny.
It's only funny because of Ian's stupid face. It's not...
I know. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we're missing.
I just
the mom
we
and the
already
Manticore kill that pawn
it.
shop owner, and
that's fun when she gets stabbed in the neck.
Yeah. I want to talk about the scene with the bridge.
Oh yeah.
Because that's like the best scene in the movie.
It's
when he's
so
like
cool.
walking across the chasm with the like floaty spell or the like invisible bridge make spell. And then he's like walking across and the rope gives out. And he's just like, it's like pushing somebody on a bike and letting them go and be like, yeah, I still got you. But like, there's this moment.
There's so much more stakes.
Yeah, when you see it like fall and you just see Chris Pratt be like, ah, and he's like, you still got me, right? And he's just like, yeah, I still got you. Just keep on going, buddy.
And he's like crying too.
Yeah,
like,
I know. But it's like, it's one of those things that's like, it's so hard to like manufacture stakes in a movie like this when he's not gonna fucking die. But like, you still feel that interaction, mostly because you're seeing it through Chris Pratt's perspective, kind of,
Well, good. You're not really worried that he's gonna fall. You're worried that he's gonna be mad at Chris Pratt. That's what you're worried about. And what I love so much about they do such a good job of like realistically like representing these siblings that it's like even when he does get across fine and he like gets over there and he turns around and he's mad at him even though he made the other side. He's like, I needed that rope, and he's like, no, you didn't, and he just walks away. Like it's just
he's like, yes, I did though.
Yeah, like it's like a good interaction. Like in a story, it's like, oh, you got across fine, you got across, everything's fine, haha. But like if you did that to me, Jackson, I would be so fucking pissed at you.
Right.
You don't even know.
Right. And we talked about this in our last episode about The Incredibles. This is our second Pixar episode in a row. Fuck us. Okay.
Wow, we're the worst.
But like how like siblings don't really get to be friends until they kind of grow up, and this is like the first point I think in their relationship when they can start to kind of be friends,
Yeah.
Because I think they're pretty similar in like their age difference to us,
Probably, yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, it's fun to see because you can tell that their like relationship as people isn't necessarily that strong yet, but like this is them like figuring out what their relationship is, Yeah. I don't know. I think it's fun and cool.
Well, yeah, because they start off, it's a really subtle relationship, honestly, because at the beginning, it's like, oh, he's like the big brother, and he knows him, and he's big and dumb, and he's like on a gap year or whatever. And so we set up that relationship, and like he picks him up from school, and like they haze each other, and like, but like they're not, like they get along fine, and they don't hate each other, and they're not mean to each other, but that doesn't mean that they're like best buds either. Right. Yeah. And so yeah, I agree with you. I really like this movie, even though the point of it is that they've been looking out for each other all along. Like they're not. This movie is them like becoming friends, and I think that's really nice.
I'm trying to think. I'm just going through the events in my head. I'm just
Why
going
does
into
Ian
my
have
mind
zero
palace.
friends? Like, I know he's supposed to be like a quirky teen, but he's literally got zero friends, and I don't know how that happens.
And that's one of those things that just happens in movies all the time, where you're like, oh, it's my junior year of high school. I'm finally gonna plug up the courage to talk to a person. And you're like, okay. Like, dude, like, there's a difference between being shy and antisocial and being a fucking hermit crab.
Yeah,
you know?
but then he goes, and this always happens, when he goes and he talks to, like, the kids, and then they're, like, super nice, but, like, he still doesn't do it because of his own hangups or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, if these people are so nice and so down to hang out with you, they would just be hanging out with you. Like, this isn't this isn't how real life works.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, still, I don't know. It's just one of those things that happens all the time. It's like the teenager with no friends.
Yeah, it's like when
like,
we talked about Frozen,
happen.
and it's like Elsa's been in the castle by herself for like 10 years or whatever. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, but we're just gonna accept it.
Who's been running the country, right?
Yeah.
Like, what have you been doing this whole time? Reading?
Have you not talked to anyone in your classes? How did you do this?
Right. Where do you go for lunch? Where do you eat lunch?
Tell me where.
I want names. So I mean, yeah, let's just get to the end here, because, like, I love the way that they play, like, the climax of this movie, right?
Oh, it's so good.
Because the whole time they're, like, getting to this thing, and that moment where he's just like, you talk to him, I'll go hold off the dragon or whatever. I'm just waiting for them to figure out what their, like, gotcha loophole is so they can both talk to him, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to figure out, like, what it's gonna be, how this is gonna turn out really, like, saccharine and happy. But they commit so strongly to just being like, no, Tom Holland doesn't get to talk to his dad. Like, Chris Pratt does for a second, and it's meaningful to them, and, you know, he tells him that he loves him, and that, you know, he expresses to his dad that Tom Holland's there too, and, you know, that he's sorry he can't see him, and so, like, it has a meaning for him in that sense, but still, he just has to kind of watch from, like, far away, and you just have to live with that, you know?
Yeah. What I love so much about this film is that it doesn't really have a villain. Like, there are people who, like, inherit antagonistic roles for different parts of the story, but there's never just, like, there's never a Hans. No one turns around and is like, aha, I am the bad guy. Like, it never happens. And I really like that.
Yeah, and I feel like there has been kind of a movement lately of, like, no villain stories in Disney. We talked about it a lot with Ant-Man and the Wasp, and there was something else I was thinking of lately that it just seems like Disney's been thinking about the, like, no villain model of storytelling a lot more lately.
I mean Frozen 2 a little bit too, because the villain is, like, the grandpa, but he's, like, not there to, like, be a villain. So really it's just about the conflict that's caused by his previous villainy. Right,
exactly. You know, and you know, there's still, like, a protagonist and an antagonist, you know, but it's not, like, good guy, bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. And then, like, the movie ends and it's just like, you know, life goes on. You know, he had this quest and it changed his life, but he's still in high school, and now he has some more confidence. You're like,
I really like that scene at the end where they're just doing show and tell in high school for some reason. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's another one of those things.
He's like, this is magic. I do magic now. And one of the girls is like, oh, that's how you fixed everything. And he's like, yeah. And then this kid in the front just says, like, the snottiest thing ever. And that was accurate for high school. He's like, didn't you also destroy the school? And he's like, yeah. But, like, it wasn't like, when people say that, it's like a plot point of like, oh, some people don't like magic. It's not that. Right. That's just a high school kid being an asshole. And that was great. That was realistic.
Tom Holland kills him with magic.
Yeah, then he lightning bolts him and his brain melts.
It's like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. The kid's head explodes.
And a bunch of tarantulas come out. What happens in Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Have you still not seen it?
I still haven't. Listen, I watched the first 10 minutes of the first Indiana Jones movie.
And the bugs freaked you out too bad?
Well, where they're covered in tarantulas, and then that guy gets, like, stabbed into the, like, spike wall, and I was like, oh, I don't like this. I'm done with this.
Right, but you're also, like, 10 years old at that point.
Yeah, but I haven't recovered.
I feel like Raiders of the Lost Ark is a movie that, like, everybody across the board probably watched too young.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just, like, a galvanizing experience of, like, Gen X parents. It's just like, oh, I love Indiana Jones. Raiders of the Lost Ark is so good. Is there anything really intense in that movie? Like, I don't really remember. I think it's fine. And then showing it to your kids and the guy gets, like, eaten by the propeller blades of an airplane, and, like, the Nazis' heads explode at the end, and, like, gruesome detail, and they're like, oh, fuck. That
Oh, I forgot.
like 11-year-old Timmy is like, whoa. Were there any other movies you watched too young, Adeline?
Well, we talk about this a lot. I was the biggest baby on the planet for some reason when it came to movies, just because, I don't know, something about it being a movie, like, I thought it was always going to be way worse than it actually was.
Right.
But so I was always, like, really scared of things, and, like, about emotional things and gory things. Like, I was just scared about everything. But then I remember one day Dad was just like, I'm going to watch Lord of the Rings. And I was like, I will also watch that with you, Father. And then Mom was like, Adeline, you can't fucking watch Lord of the Rings. You can barely handle Star Wars. You're not going to like it. Right. And then I think my 10-year-old brain was just like, fuck you, I'm going to watch Lord of the Rings. And then I watched Lord of the Rings and it didn't bother me at all. So that was like my first experience of like, oh, it's not that bad. Like the goblin just gets shot with an arrow and then he falls over and then it's over.
I remember I watched the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man I watched really young. And for some reason, I remember it was at Grammy and Papa's house. And I was just in their bedroom, Grammy and Papa's bedroom, by myself watching this movie. I don't remember what happened. They must have been having a party or something, and they were just like, put Jackson in the bedroom and give him a movie or something, you know?
Give him Spider-Man.
Right, so they're just like, okay, here's fucking Spider-Man. And I was like, okay, cool, tight. And I like watched it, and I was like, hell yeah, I love this. But then at the end, when like Tobey Maguire's like beating the shit out of Willem Dafoe and like stabs him in the stomach with his own glider, I was like, whoa, fuck. Like,
yeah, I guess the ending of that movie does get pretty rough.
It's pretty hardcore. Yeah. Especially, like, I don't know, I made that whole video where I said how not that hardcore it is, but as a 8-year-old, it's super hardcore.
Yeah, when you're 8.
It was probably, like, the first, like, PG-13 movie I ever watched. But it didn't, like, scare me or anything, but I just remember being like, fuck, like, that was intense. Like, goddamn. Yeah. I also watched Raiders of the Lost Ark too early. The scene when the guy's head explodes really bothered me.
I don't remember what movie it was. I think it was an Indiana Jones. Is there an Indiana Jones movie where he's like confronting somebody and they're like in a circle of people and like one of the guys like falls over and like falls on his own sword the wrong way?
That happens in Where the Red Fern Grows.
It's some film. Anyway, I don't remember the film. Something happens where some bad guy like falls on his sword and like stabs himself. And then for some reason for the rest of my life, I've been like, oh, that's my least favorite thing in the whole world when somebody falls on their own sword in a weird way. That's
what happens in like the third act of Where the Red Fern Grows before his dogs die of sadness. Like the bully kid like chases him down to beat him up, but he like trips him and he falls on his knife and he dies. And I don't know why that's relevant to the story or why that happens, but
this story is about 2 sad dogs who die of depression. I don't care about Jimmy who got stabbed.
I should read that book again because it seems so whack. Like, what's the deal with that book? Like, I'm sure it's good. Like, and I couldn't really appreciate the artistry of it at age like 8 or whatever it was that I read it and watched that movie originally.
In elementary school.
But, like, it seems like kind of like it sucks. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Who wrote this
story and why?
And, like, if it really sucked as bad as it seems like it does in my mind, we probably wouldn't still be talking about it, would we? Like, what's the deal with this?
It's like some people write about really bad experiences so that other people can learn from them and like we can all appreciate the art of it, and that's great. But when you talk about when you shot your dog and then the other dog got depressed and then also died, right. I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from that other than wow, that's rough, buddy. I'm sorry that happened to your dogs.
I don't know if this is a weird false memory or if this actually happens in the book. I remember that when the first dog gets mauled by the cougar and it gets like cut open and it's like, oh, its intestines are hanging out. And I remember that, first of all, that they do that at all, that there's a book for kids where it's like, oh, and then the dog's intestines came out. But then like the mom was like tending to the dog's wounds and she had to like lay the dog's intestines into like a frying pan to like cauterize them and like sanitize them, I guess. And that was, like, in it? Where they, like, describe the dog sitting next to, like, on the counter with its intestines out into a frying pan? Is that real? Somebody tell me if that's real or if I made that up.
Don't know.
Because I wouldn't put it past where the red fern grows.
Well, see, what I thought you were going to say, because this is a thing that happens sometimes, where when cougars eat stuff, they eat it in a tree, so sometimes you'll see, like, carcasses, like, in the trees.
Right.
So that's what I thought you were going to say, and that's not what you said.
Because they drag it out. Like, it gets mauled by a cougar, but it doesn't get killed right then. It's, like, horribly mortally wounded, and they have to, like, take it back home and tend to it for 2 days, where it's just in agony until it finally dies. And then the other dog fucking dies of sadness afterwards. Like... Just
like I did at age 8.
What the fuck is up with that? Why?
Yeah.
I'm so worked up about this again. 20 years later. Okay. Okay, do you want to wrap it up, or do you have anything else
Jackson?
to say? Whatever. Do you have anything else you want to say about Onward, or do you want to wrap it up?
I feel like we didn't touch on it, because whenever we talk about Pixar, we have to, like, take a minute to be like, oh man, the animation's so good. Because it is. And, like, the animation's so good. And it's, because it's reality adjacent and not Toy Story, where it's supposed to be, like, reality, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. We didn't get like the rain from Toy Story 4, but there were just, like, little things that, like, every once in a while I'd be like, oh, holy shit, that looks really good. Like, the mom, like, wears a sweater that just, like, looks like a real sweater, and it messes me up. Or, like,
right, yeah.
Anytime Ian, like, writes on a piece of paper, like, one of his lists, like, the way that, like, the ink, like, looks like how ink actually looks is, like, just really, really cool. It's not like a font. It's, like, they made sure it looks how it looks when you write with a cheap ink pen, and it's like, oh, that's really good.
Right. And I feel like, just in terms of, like, visual language, they get a lot of mileage out of the, like, fantasy skyline with just, like, an airplane going by.
I love that shot.
It's so cool.
Much.
And yeah, there was something else I wanted to add about the visual, like, the way that it looks, but now I can't remember what it was. Save me.
I mean, they do that with, like, the buildings and stuff. Like, the buildings, like, aren't skyscrapers or houses or whatever. They're all, like, mushroom houses and, like, castle skyscrapers, which is kind of dumb, but I think it's fun to just, like, include that kind of visually. Oh, we didn't talk about the car at all, and I really love how they kind of characterize the car.
Right.
Like, where it's, like, it's kind of, like, a character and a horse, and it's also kind of just a van. Like, it's just, like, all the emotion that what's his name? Burley?
I don't know. Chris Pratt. I don't give a fuck.
All of the emotion that Burley puts onto the car, like, just kind of becomes its own character, and it's just so much fun. And it's a trope, but it's just, like, the most accurate trope of, like, teenagers having crappy cars. That's just so relatable. And just, like, how much he loves this crappy car. Right. Like, I remember your car that you got in a car accident with. That was, like, my favorite car.
That car ripped because the windshield wiper fluid squirter was broken in the back. So when I would press the button to squirt onto my back windshield, it would just shoot a jet of windshield wiper fluid straight out backwards.
I love that car so much.
If I was in traffic, I could just do that and spray windshield wiper fluid on the person behind me.
And then get murdered by somebody on I-90.
So good. I never actually did it. I squirted it at my friends a few times, but I never had the courage to actually do it to, like, just, like, a person on the street. I wish I would have,
why would you?
Yeah. And then I got in a car accident and got totaled, and I was bummed about it.
And we were all sad.
Yeah. Anyway, but, okay, all right, okay, we have to talk about this. The cop who's gay. Your take?
Okay, people are so mad that she's, like, ugly and whatever, and it's like, oh, the first lesbian and she's ugly, and I'm like, you guys are mean. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, I get wanting to have a lot of representation, and this is a very specific kind of representation, and, like, wanting more representation in the future, and, like, I totally get that. But just, like, being super mean to this one character, and I hate it. Like, because she's an awesome character. Like, she's on screen for, like, only a few minutes, but you get so much of her character, and, like, she's so nice and cool, and people just don't like her because she's ugly, and I'm like, you guys are fucking mean.
Okay, I have a fistful of takes about this.
Yeah.
My first is just that Disney keeps doing this thing over and over and over again, where they keep putting little pieces of like gay representation in movies, which I think is not a bad thing. You know, it's like a big cultural thing, and especially with foreign markets being the way they are and how important they are, it's like something that we really need to be like easing into. I mean, not that I'm saying, me personally, like, we have to take it slow, but like just in terms of like the way that the film business works is something that's really tricky, right? So they keep peppering in like these little tiny things, and then every time they're like, "Oh, check it out! Look what we did! We're gonna do a press release where we say that she's gay, and this is the first gay one." And they've done it like 4 times. They did it with Avengers Endgame. They did it with Beauty and the Beast, and they did it with this movie. And everybody says like, "This is not good enough," right? Which is true, you know. Like, you need to be doing better than this. But at the same time, I think if they were just doing it and not making a big fucking deal out of it, people would not have a problem at all. People would be like, "Oh, that was kind of cool. They put in a lesbian character just for a second. Maybe this is a stepping stone to something bigger, to a broader change later."
I guess they didn't do that with LeFou. I thought
no, they did. They totally did.
No, they did do it. No, what I thought they did was, I thought they were like, the first gay character, and everyone's like, that's problematic, and then they went, never mind, he's not gay anymore. But they didn't do that. They committed to him being gay.
Yeah. But then the other thing is that apparently Onward got banned in a handful of countries because of this. But I am not entirely sure that is perfectly fair, because this is a movie that they're going to be doing dubs and subtitles for in other countries. Obviously, it's not the same language. It would be so easy to change that line just slightly and have nobody ever be any of the wiser, right?
Yeah.
So I think the fact that they made a big deal out of the fact that it got banned in certain other countries, I don't think they even tried to bring it to China. The China movie economy is so crazy because the Chinese government basically does not allow you to make small budget independent films on your own and display them. Yeah. And the only movies they make there are like big, huge budget blockbusters. And they have like a certain trade agreement with America where they can only bring in, it's like 10 or 15 American movies into the Chinese market a year. That way it's not just fully like American movies like flooding their whole shit.
Which I get.
Yeah. But like literally what that means is that they only get like Avengers movies and Jurassic Park movies. So like they're
only getting blockbusters.
Yeah, their entire diet of cinema is just like huge budget clusterfucks, and that's so crazy to me. Anyway, but what was I talking about? My point is, I think that they weren't actually trying to get, this is a conspiracy theory, but that they weren't actually trying to get this movie into those other countries. They just wanted to submit it as is and get it rejected so that they could say like, "Oh, we're suffering for this. We took one for the team for you guys on this one,"
no.
You know?
Yeah, I totally get that. I totally see that.
Anyway, but that is not necessarily true. That's just my reading my conspiracy theory about it. Anyway, do you want to hear a 1-star review of Onward, Adeline?
Oh no.
So this review from Letterboxd.com is marked as spoilers. So get ready. There's some spoilers in this one. They say, "Sucks."
That's so good.
I know. Anyway,
Spoiler alert, it's bad.
It sucks, no good. My name's Jackson McMurray.
My name's Adeline McMurray.
And this is No Nerds Allowed.
And there are no nerds allowed. I should
Phase
just,
2. No Nerds Allowed. Phase 2.
I should do that with all of my opinions. Just be like, spoiler alert. I didn't think that sandwich was very good.
We should put in the audio from the IMAX sizzle reel at the beginning of every episode. That should be our new intro music.
That's really good.